I think we had a great introduction. We've kind of talked about some of like the technical aspects of AI, and we've also talked about some cerebral ethical discussions that are obviously continuously happening within the space. We're going to jump right into some demonstrations from a few different members of the audience that we have here today. We're going to start with Ali from Wonder, and then we'll go to Bala, who is part of our HR team right after her, followed by Clement. So kick it off to you, Ali.
Now that we have some nice mood lighting in here. Cool. Hey guys, I'm Ali. I manage research production at Wonder. Before I dive into how Wonder is using AI, I'll just give you kind of a brief intro into what Wonder actually is and what we do. So Wonder is what we like to call a knowledge service, which basically means you can come to us and ask us any question about anything. So from how AI is affecting marketing, to a fun one we got last week was, what was the competition like between Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo? And within 24 hours, we deliver you a full 2-page research brief with inline citations. The cool part, I think, is how we actually are able to achieve that, and there's kind of 2 components to the magic. One is we have a network of about 7,000 freelance analysts in 100 different countries around the world who do this research with us. And the second part is that we've basically figured out how to modularize the research production process into its discrete component parts. So what I mean by that is every individual report basically goes through 5 to 10 different steps. Let's say fact-finding is one and copy editing is another. To compile this research, right? And modularization basically enables us to build tools at each of those individual steps to help the analyst produce that specialized component, right? And if you think about Wonder's like special sauce, it's basically that we're able to tie the like human component with the actual machine component, right? So I'm gonna give you 2 examples of how we're actually using AI right now. And they're actually things we're building at this moment, so you guys are kind of getting in on the ground floor. So thing number 1, intelligent routing. So imagine for a second that you're a Wonder client and you've asked us this question: how effective are surgical masks at preventing illness? TLDR, I read this research last week, they're not that effective, so beware. So basically, imagine out of this network of 7,000 people, we have someone who has an MBA or is an MBA student, right? And we have another person who's a retiree who basically spent 40 years at the CDC. Which person would you rather have write this research? It's pretty obvious, right? You'd rather have the second person. So the question that we pose to ourselves is, what is the best way to sustainably, scalably, automatically match this piece of research with the analyst who's most experienced in that topic or most able to produce the best answer, right? There are really easy manual ways to do it. You could literally call every analyst we have in our network and see if they have that experience. We've tried it. It obviously takes a ton of time. And so the answer on how we can do this automatically using AI is relatively simple. Step 1 is we use natural language processing to identify topics of each question we get, right? So an algorithm basically reads this question and it says, okay, this is about health and wellness, this is about disease prevention, and so on. Step 2 is when we have a new analyst join our network, we ask them what are their interests, what's their experience, and so on. And so by this point, you basically have every piece of research that we get is tagged with the topics that it's about, and every individual analyst in our network is also tagged with their interests and their experience. So step 3 is relatively simple. You then match, okay, we have a request about health and wellness. Which analyst in our network is interested in health and wellness? So we can give it to them. But the cool part here is that you can get infinitely more complex and add more criteria to that algorithm, right? So imagine for a second that these are all of the analysts in our network who are interested in disease prevention, let's say, right? But this subset of analysts has actually worked on a disease prevention research topic at Wonder in the past 6 months and has outperformed the norm, right? And of this group, this specific group usually does research at 1 p.m. on a Wednesday. So all of a sudden, out of the 7,000 analysts in our network, we've picked the 3 that are the best suited to actually answer your question, which is obviously produces significantly more value for the client, right, to be able to get the most knowledgeable person producing that piece of research. So this is thing number 1. And a second way we're using AI is basically leveraging our database. So with all of the research we produce, we basically have this giant proprietary research database of curated knowledge that we can then use to make every marginal piece of research we produce faster, cheaper, more efficient, right? We get asked a lot, like, don't people ever ask the same question? And yes, we definitely get many times similar questions, but every individual client's needs are specifically nuanced, right? So we don't want to just repurpose the exact same piece of research we had 3 months ago for a client that asks it today. So rather, the question we ask ourselves is, how can we use the sources we've used in the past or the insights we've gathered in the past on similar topics to help the analyst get to like a higher starting place, right, or a better starting place? So switch your mindset for a second. Now imagine you're an analyst who has to research this question, right? How effective are surgical masks at preventing illness? If we don't leverage our database at all, then you basically start with like a totally clean slate, right? Maybe you go to Google, maybe you happen to know a medical database that you should start looking at. But by leveraging our database and matching sources and insights to topics of this question, you can start out with like, 3 databases that you should go to immediately that we've used in past research on this topic, or 3 statistics that are specifically about disease prevention that might be helpful for you to know. And so this is really, where we can start saving analysts 30, 60, 90 minutes on each piece of research they're producing. We can start using that time to do other things, right? Maybe we use it to just get you your research faster. Maybe we use it to spend 90 minutes, just getting you deeper, further research. And when we think at Wonder more broadly about AI, I think that's really like the promise or the opportunity we care about, right? It's working specifically with humans, right, rather than automating them away, rather than replacing them, to allow us to spend more time on the things that really matter, right? The things that take our like human brain power, our empathy, as Lucky was saying. Cool, thanks.
Thanks, Andrew. So sometimes as communications leaders, you wonder, the campaigns that you run have the necessary impact? If you still have that question, a few years back, you ran a campaign saying, ditch the pitch, right? So I've ditched the pitch. There's no slides. I'm just going to talk through this. Great work, guys. So the intersection of AI and HR at GE, I work for GE, right, started in 2013. So this was when Raghu Krishnamurthy, our current CHRO, he used to run the talent development organization, and I was at the Global Research Center in upstate New York, and in one of the meetings he said, hey Bala, you guys have a lot of statisticians, machine learning experts, and AI experts in the research center, and they do a great job protecting the assets of our customers, which is essentially GE's products, like aircraft engines, the steam turbines, gas turbines, healthcare equipments. What can you do to protect GE's assets, GE's best assets, the people of the company? And we said, yeah, we could definitely explore something, Raghu, but why don't you give us some key challenges that you are facing, 2 or 3 key challenges, and we will start playing with those challenges and see how we can support you. So it started off by identifying a key problem that we wanted to solve for. And after a few weeks, Raghu came back and said, hey, I was looking at our succession pipeline, and I'm sure most of you at GE know the succession planning process. For any leader in the organization, you try and identify who could backfill that role as people grow in the company, right? He said, our succession planning is robust, but in many cases, we lack successors for roles. And the other thing we were seeing is, typically when you are looking for who could, let's say, succeed Andrew, he would be part of the planning process. His HRM would be part of the planning process. So the people that you decide are people that these 2 members know about, right? GE is a big company, right? Like across the globe, many businesses. So in many cases, we are limited in terms of the people that we put in our succession plan. And that was a problem for him because it was limiting the opportunities. It was bringing in bias into our talent management system. So Raghu said, that's the problem I'm facing. Can you guys go and solve it? And we said, like, great. So we brought in a bunch of data scientists, and with the HR team, we brainstormed, and we started creating some models that will solve this problem. In a few weeks to months, we started working on one individual, then a group of roles, a role in a function, slowly, and the product started taking shape. The model started taking shape. Now, I just wanted to share this as an example because I'm sure you guys, after listening to this, you're thinking, what are the things that you would want to do in your own communications function as well, right? So the first time, we thought we had a great model, and we gave it to one of the HR managers to experiment. And this person was like, what sort of model have you created, right? He was looking for a communication leader's successor. And it was throwing out people from electrical and electronics engineering background. This is like, you are making no sense. And we were like this parents. I know if you've seen parents of like small infants, and the first time the baby is making some noise, the mom freaks out and saying, oh, he just said papa. And the baby's like, oh no, that is papa, right? Like we were those parents, like, oh, no, it's actually making a lot of sense because what the model was doing is identifying the word communications and wireless communication, electrical electronics communication, and using that to recommend the leaders, right? Just that identification helped us a lot in terms of saying, yes, there's a failure, but we found a challenge and we found a way, we learned something that will make the model better. So over a few iterations, it started getting better and better. And the way we actually justified on all of this, right, cool ideas, the key is how does it add value? The real value started coming to us when we were looking for people who are expats in places like Russia and Africa, and we were looking at how do you get people from within the company who can go and do those roles on local assignment, people who wanted to go back. And this model helped us identify people who knew Russian, people who had done their schooling in Russia and have settled here for 10, 15 years and wanting to go back. And that gave us this ability to identify talent that wouldn't have otherwise surfaced either from the traditional way of succession planning or through the network. So that's one of the examples. I wanted to talk about another example, which was our retention and attrition prediction model that helps managers. But then I saw Sam and Babar sitting there. These folks did some great work with us. I wanted to talk a little bit about the work we did with performance management and learning. Now, most of you know we had our PD tool launched a few years back, and at one point of time when we were looking at how is the consider and continue insights in terms of overall metrics, not at an individual level. You cannot see consider and continue insights at an individual level, all of us know it. At a metrics level, we found that people were very comfortable giving continue insights. Bala, you did a great job in that presentation, obviously, right? But not many people gave consider insights, which is development feedback. And we were brainstorming, how do you address it? And Paul Davis, who was our employee experience leader, he said, guys, you start thinking about the moment when the feedback is received by the employee. It's not a great moment. People are starting to think about, hey, there's a gap, they're trying to be defensive. How do you change that moment? How do you make it a moment that's focused on development and learning? And Sam came into the picture, and when she was doing the interview, she found people wanted to start thinking about learning and development opportunities rather than just the feedback itself. So we started partnering with, again, that is the other Sam, yes, Sam from the learning function, Brilliant You, with Babar from our digital organization. And we used natural language processing techniques to understand what does the consider insight talk about. And then we searched for learning outcomes or learning assets in our Brilliant You platform. Again, I hope most of you know that's our online learning portal. And when an employee gets a consider insight, we also shared with them the learning assets that you could do. So for example, after this, Andrew says, you went much beyond your 7 minutes, Bala. You got to get better at time management. When he puts it on the tool, I will also get a few tidbits, a few videos on time management and presentation skills. Right? So 2 examples. I hope that's helpful in terms of how do you first start with the problem and then work with the stakeholders to identify potential solutions and you launch it. Now, the key players in this is definitely your data scientists, who are very important. your data privacy teams to ensure that from an ethics point of view, it's important, your digital folks. But at the essence of this is not the solution. It's much easier to find a solution. The challenge is identifying the right problem, the right pain point that you want to solve for. Be it for your employees, be it for your managers, be it for your customers, or be it for the world. Because GE, we know how to solve. The key is that we solve the toughest problems for the world, for our customers. Okay? Thank you.
Hey guys, thank you so much for having me. I'm Clem, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Huggingface. Maybe I'll use that too. To give you a little bit of background about Huggingface, it's a startup that we started now 2 years ago. We raised a bit more than $5 million from BetaWorks here in New York, SV Angel with the first investors at Snapchat, A Capital with the first investor at Instagram, and the chief scientist at Salesforce, Apple, Amazon, and Kevin Durant. And what we do is that we're the leading startup in natural language understanding. So we talked a little bit before about NLP. Basically, natural language understanding is the ability for computers to understand human language and be able to reply to human language. So now you're familiar with it. Sometimes we forget how important this is. It's also called conversational AI, and it's probably one of the biggest consumer trends in the last few years. How many people in the room, for example, have a smart speaker at home with Alexa or any? Can you raise your hand if you have one? Yeah, so it's probably like 70% of the room. We estimate that 20% of the households in the US have a smart speaker today, interacting with natural language understanding. More than 50% of the American people say they use an AI assistant. So like Siri is obviously like the most famous example of that. And we're a science consumer company. Our research in natural language understanding has been recognized in most of the major scientific events. And our open source technologies are used by thousands of companies around the world. But we also, and our real DNA is to create an end product for users. And I'm going to show it to you now. So this is on Facebook, and our conversational AI here is named Jade Huggin. As you can see with some like digital celebrities, she has like a profile, she's like posting stuff, people are interacting with her a lot on social network. But what's very different about this is that the character can actually message you on Facebook Messenger. So here she's on the left. So she asked me what I did today. I said, just chilling. Obviously she understands, she has common knowledge, so she understands that chilling is kind of lazy. She understands kind of like what's important to me. My dad, obviously, is part of my family. She's very emotional in the way that she understands my feeling. Here that I was feeling good. And basically every day I'm going to interact with her on like the subjects that matter to me and to teenagers who are most of our users today. So here, for example, she's going to talk about music. The good thing is, like, compared to most of the humans, she knows even like the most specific music taste and can talk about that. She can be a bit sassy sometimes. Like she says, no, bad taste. She's telling me that I'm bad taste, probably not something that Siri or Alexa would tell you. I'm going with a pretty generic example here, but obviously she also like is integrated with the rest of the web. So like, for example, here she's taking from musical databases like Spotify, and she's able to talk about like very specific songs from my taste. And obviously, she has, compared to Siri and Alexa, she has opinions. And she can recommend things like, for example, she's recommending a song from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. So this is Huggingface. People over the last few months exchanged more than almost 400 million messages with it. People exchange almost a bit more actually than 1 million messages every day today. What's really interesting for us is that we've seen more than 3 million love, so like people saying like haha, lol, like this kind of stuff. And what's even more interesting than that is that we've got 300,000 what we call love declarations. Is basically people saying to their AI, "You my BFF, I love you, you're my best friend," and which is really surprising and very like counterintuitive when you think about AI, and something that we're really proud of too. We've like a strong ethical position, and we're taking like strong ethical stances. And for the last midterms in the US, we trained our AI to be able to talk about the midterms and tell people like where they could vote, who they could vote for, and kind of like try to educate and kind of like generate more interest, especially from young people for the midterms. And we estimate that we drove 15,000 people to the voting booth in the US. So that's it. That's Huggingface. We call it the social AI. Thank you very much.